Hello everyone, it is I, Mark Major. I am at my studio, the Action Figuratorium, the studio within a studio. And one of the things which I like about being a total nothing burger YouTube toy channel is that I don't have any affiliations to any of these brands or companies, and I can say whatever I want, which is why today I am making yet another one of these Haslab videos. I originally wanted to create one Haslab video back in the day. I think this is like my 6th or 7th one. I just completely pushed into doing these from a marketing point of view. It's not a choice I'm making. They're making this choice for me. But knowing that there's absolutely nobody from Haslab or Hasbro that's going to watch my video, I can say anything I want, and that's what's going to happen today as we're going to look at some previous Haslabs to predict in their respective lines, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Marvel Legends, Star Wars, what is coming next. So that's coming up on today's Action Figuratorium. Why don't you guys stick around? All right, let me make sure before I switch over that the sounds are turned off. Okay, let's go to browser view. Oh, everybody loves browser view, don't they? I'm in the corner, by the way, in case you're wondering where I went. I'm down here. So let's look at these Haslab projects. I got a bunch of tabs open. We're just going to go through the tabs. We're going to go through it by franchise. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the G.I. Joe Haslab projects, and before I get into those, let me show you a website that everybody here who collects toys should know about. It's called YoJoe. If you're not familiar with it, now you are. You can say you saw it here first. It's just a big database of G.I. Joe action figures and vehicles of the different scales that have come out over the years. So you can see here, let me click on the 1/18th scale. Every year is listed here. You click on a year and you get the total lineup of the toys that came out that year. And they also have vehicles, so you can go to any year. Like, let's say, hey, what vehicles came out in 1987? You click on 1987 and there you go. This is all the stuff that came out, yada yada. You can see all the various models of toys that they put out, etc. This is very important for the context of this Haslab. Okay, so let's look at what G.I. Joe team is doing with their Haslabs. Essentially what they've done is they followed this plan, this battle plan that seems to work just absolutely perfect for them. They basically take these legacy 3.75 figures and they're just putting them out as 6-inch figures now. They're just going through the back catalog and they're picking out the ones that they think are going to have the best chance of selling. And then for the vehicles, same thing. They're going through this database. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the people who work for G.I. Joe Hasbro actually just use YoJoe's website and not their own internal site. And they go through and they are cherry picking the vehicles that they want to come out with in a Haslab project for 1/12 scale. And so the first one they did was the Sky Striker. It funded. Next one they did was the Hiss Tank. It funded, right? And then the one that they just put out is the Dragonfly helicopter. It funded. So based on that, what is going to be coming out from G.I. Joe Haslab? More vehicles. Which ones? Pick one. Who knows? They've done like a helicopter, a tank, and a jet. Expect something like a boat next. Something, you know, watercraft, or just something different than the others. They're not going to do another tank, another helicopter. They're going to keep mixing it up, right? At the same time, they're going to try and pick things that they think fans will like, you know, fan favorites, that kind of stuff, sort of, you know, scouring the forums, seeing what people are talking about, that sort of thing. But that's what you're going to get. You're just going to get something from the YoJoe database of vehicles blimped up to 1/12 scale. Okay, let's move on to X-Men. What has been X-Men projects of the past that have succeeded? Well, the Sentinels seem to have done quite well, and what is that? It's just a big giant dude, big giant robot dude. What'd they come out with after that? Galactus. He was an even bigger giant dude. Also looks kind of robotic, if you ask me. Almost looks kind of like the Sentinel in a way. Almost looks like they took a lot of the things that they did in the design of the Sentinel on a computer, and they just sort of drag and dropped it and made the Galactus out of it, if you know what I mean. We'll do a video on that in the future. Okay, what didn't fund? Well, this vehicle didn't fund. No one felt like paying $350 for a car. So what do you think's coming next? Well, two big guys funded and a car didn't fund. So let's do another big guy. All right, Giant Man. And because people said the car was too expensive, they dropped this down to $200. If the car had funded, this would have been $300. Okay, so what are we going to get in the future from Haslab Marvel Legends team? We're going to get big giant dudes. Which big giant dudes? I don't know. We're going to have to scour the comics to find who's left. Some people on like the 3POA podcast have said things like possibility of what might be cool would be something like giants. I think that might be interesting because you could kind of use them, maybe some other toy lines. You maybe use them the fantasy lines, things like that. Might be kind of interesting. I think you wouldn't be enough to put out one giant. I think you have to do like 2 or 3, maybe use the same body but different decos, different heads, that kind of thing. I think that could all be done. Giants in Thor's world could be a possibility, but we'd have to scour it. But I'm basically going to say that they're not going to do vehicles. They're not going to do ships. They're not going to do big giant playsets. They're going to stick with what's working. That seems to be big giant dudes. Okay, let's move on to Star Wars, because everybody loves Star Wars. I'm a big fan of the original Star Wars. I saw it when I was a kid when it was just called Star Wars. Does anyone remember that? I wish you did. Here we go. Here was the first thing that funded. It was a big ship, the sail barge. Kind of a playset. To me, it's more like a playset, but, you know, it's a ship. For the sake of this video, let's call it a ship. All right, then we had the Razor Crest, right? The first one was 1/18 scale. This thing is 1/18 scale. Very important to note that. This thing funded. I think it was actually kind of a bit more of a promo for the Mandalorian show. Kind of a nice tie-in, but people liked it. People backed it. It's kind of cool. I wish I had one. I don't want to spend any money on it, but I wish I had one. I like parts of the Mandalorian. I like the Lone Wolf and Cub sort of homage ripoff. You know what I'm talking about. This funded, though, is a big giant ship. And what just funded, what just closed? This ship from Rebels, big giant ship. So 3 things that funded for Star Wars, what were they? They were big giant ships. Big giant ships seem to fund. People seem to like those. Okay, what didn't fund? Well, this big giant dude, this sort of brown monster. It looks a bit like a turd, and it kind of was a turd as far as it funding. It got pretty close, though. It was shy a few hundred. What else didn't fund? This thing, this prop that no one asked for, nobody wanted, no one cares. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they just silently one day took this off the website. If that happens, you guys owe me, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so what are we going to predict in the future? Let's see here. No one seems to buy in the Star Wars universe big giant monsters or props, right? Even though they probably could have done Black Series, Darth Vader, replica helmet, or Luke Skywalker replica robot hand. I don't know. They could have, you know what I mean? But it seems like with 3 ships that funded and a bunch of stuff that didn't fund, you're going to get more ships, okay? And I wouldn't be surprised if, and these ones have all been 1/18 scale, I wouldn't be surprised if they took that page from the G.I. Joe guys, or one of the G.I. Joe guys moved over to the Star Wars guys because they need help, and they said, hey, let's take legacy things from the Star Wars universe that have come out already, you know, like the Boba Fett ship or like the Cloud City pod cars or snow speeders, things like that, and let's Haslab them up as 1/12 scale because it seems to work for G.I. Joe. That's going to be the Action Figuratorium prediction, is that they're going to be using Black Series size ships going forward in the future. We'll see what happens. All right, we might as well finish up with the last guys, the Transformers. This is kind of boring and generic. I think we know where this is going. The first thing that funded was, of course, a giant Transformer. And then the next thing that funded was another Transformer, and he's giant. And then they did yet another one from the Transformers who's giant. So I think it's pretty safe to say that they're just going to continue to make more Transformers in HasLab, but they're just going to be giant. They're just going to be a big robot. I think people in Japan would probably like that. You know, they had a whole bunch of like 80s toys that were all sort of like big giant robots, sort of Giant Robo comes to mind as one of them. And they also had that show called Robotech. Everything is robot to them. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be part of the formula. Anyways, take a robot, make it big. Maybe they'll take some existing character that we haven't seen in a while that they can make big, like Omega Supreme was a Transformer, but was also like a playset when I was a kid. Now I have to say that I watched the G1 Transformers show when it came out, when I was a very, very, very young lad, and I actually collected the Transformers at around age 14. I had like all 6 of the Constructicons, I had all 3 of the Insecticons, I had some Dinobots, I had like those little tape cassette dudes who, you know, I had that stuff, all the smaller ones, things like that. And let me tell you something about Transformers, right? When they're in robot mode, they don't look like anything. They just look like junk, okay? They look like a pencil sharpener. They're like those Constructicons. They didn't look like anything. So it doesn't really matter what these guys do as long as it's big and giant. That is my overall prediction for the 4 lines. G.I. Joe, you're just going to get more legacy vehicles blimped up to 1/12 scale. Pick one that we haven't seen in a while that you think is going to do well, and that's what they're going to do. You know, if they've done something in the air and something in the land, they'll do something in the sea, that kind of thing. You know, just keep rotating it around. Marvel Legends, you're just going to get more action figures at a giant scale. Star Wars, you're going to get more ships. Transformers, you're just going to get more big Transformers. And that concludes this episode today. If you enjoyed this at all in any way, give it a like. If you didn't like it, though, let me know what you didn't like about it, and maybe on the next one we'll correct that. See you then.